Welcome to the Conception Channel podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode on the Conception Channel podcast. I am your host, Spence Pentland, and today we have a return guest, Holly Yager. Welcome back to the show, Holly.
Hi, Spence. Thank you for having me.
All the way from the sunny Okanagan, which we were just chatting about. I appreciate you coming back on. There's always questions from people about advice from more of a counseling perspective. And Holly's a counselor and has been doing this since 2001. And with large amount of that time spent focusing on the reproductive health and realm, if I'm not mistaken. Holly, why don't you give like a quick background for people who don't know you?
Yeah, I've been a counselor in BC since 2001. And that entire time I've been focusing on reproductive health, fertility, pregnancy, pregnancy loss, fertility treatments, everything related to that, and pelvic pain also. And so I've been in private practice since 2007 and seeing individuals and couples primarily for this to help support them and kind of help them through what can often be trauma related to this. And so, I'm a registered clinical counselor, Canadian certified counselor, and did my training here in BC mostly at BC Women's Hospital and reproductive mental health program. And I've been able to put that training to good use over the years.
Amazing. Yeah. The quote that, I sent you that is so common. It's like, do you have advice for couples? The fertility challenges are really hard and quite traumatic. Like, how do we maintain love, intimacy, and joy? And I'm sure that is something that is just built into your sphere of influence and area of expertise.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned, how do you maintain joy when this is something that just rips people apart internally, and infertility, as we know, it affects pretty much every part of life. And so focusing on the relationship can be really hard when individually people are just trying to stay above water on their own.
So all consuming.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like how just below the surface is it at all times? I mean, I clinical practice as well, focusing in reproductive health, as you know, for since 2004. So it seems, I get to get pretty intimate with a lot of people that come through the clinic, and I love that about what we do. But you get way deeper, and so how close beneath the surface is it through everyday activities?
Yeah, and I'm curious to know if our views are the same. I suspect they are, because I think for a lot of people it's constant. It's constantly just below the surface, or sometimes even above the surface. And it's so easy, the term "I'm triggered," and it's so easy to feel triggered by pretty much everything when it's been hard to get pregnant or stay pregnant. And, I hear people talking about having to leave their job entirely, if they previously worked with children, or labor and delivery nurses, that kind of thing, where it's just too much to deal with. And you start to see pregnancy and families and babies everywhere. And it can really impact the the activities and the decisions that people make, and can really lead to isolation too. You probably see that.
Well, you say people leaving their job, sometimes I admittedly would say maybe it's not a bad idea, like to people, that just because I'm like, how we've got to elicit some change or something, because it's become, the magnitude of things it's just so heavy. And so that's work. And then if your group of friends is all kind of moving into having children, and you might kind of need to separate, spiritually divorce from them in a sense, and family, if they're not supportive, certain cultural, nuances there play a role, but I mean, just period, just not wanting to tell them. It's like, we're considering an IVF, or we're, I believe that isolation is a big thing. And what does that lead to? Or is that like kind of show up differently for everybody?
Yeah, well, I mean, the research shows that isolation is definitely not a good thing, even though in the moment it can feel like a protection, and in some cases it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it can definitely exacerbate what we call treatment burden, just feeling like it's all on your own shoulders and not having an outlet at all. The isolation can impact a relationship also, because then you're kind of, the other person is your sole support. And
Right.
any two people, if we're talking about two people in a relationship, and I guess I'm talking primarily about cisgender heterosexual couples, if they are only able to rely on each other, that gets to be pretty heavy. That's a lot of pressure, especially when two people may have very different styles of coping. Yeah. But isolation can also, when you talk about family and even work relationships and friends, it can lead to some misunderstandings. And so what I often see is, if someone is not sharing why they're feeling guarded or why they're holding back from attending different events, someone else is going to make an assumption. And that could be like, oh, well, they don't like us anymore. Or,
right. Yeah.
And that doesn't usually help things. I understand people wanting to keep their privacy, but it can lead to more misunderstandings and more isolation.
So, okay, this is great. And so going back to 2001, at the beginning of your practice, between then and now, the field and public understanding and the medicine and the technology and the complementary support and has in the reproductive health and infertility realm has changed so much. And even just to a point now where I hope everyone has a base knowledge that you don't ask someone anymore, when are you going to have kids? Or some basics, right? Or just relax. It'll be
lovely.
Yeah. Right.
Actually,
So, but I mean, even IVF, like from day 2 technology to this day 6-7 blastocyst, pre-implantation genetic testing, all kinds of things. There's been major shifts. So, how have you seen, people's willingness to just share publicly what's going on, so that kind of doesn't occur as much?
Yeah. And you're right, there's been so much change in this field. But I still see a lot of, how should I say this? Just insensitive comments from other people, not necessarily intending to be insensitive, but it stems from just not knowing enough or anything about this area. And so there is still, unfortunately, a lot of, why don't you just try this or do that or don't do that? And, which implies blame and that someone can control this and cause it. So that's a deterrent that a lot of people have for speaking out. And unfortunately, it just takes one go. Someone can gear themselves up to like, okay, I'm going to tell so-and-so. It just takes one response like that to, go right back in your shell. It is getting better, but I do still find that happens a lot. And then, shame and stigma, I used to just be the predominant thing. Secrecy. It is, people are opening up a little bit more. And I love seeing when people are like owning it and just saying, you know what, this is not my fault. I did nothing to cause this. It is not a reflection on who I am as a person.
Right.
And, it is what it is. And this is what we're doing to try to work with it. but it's still not a safe place to do that in every situation. Different families, every family's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Culture, different cultures,
Yeah.
religious faiths, you know, all of that can feel like a very dangerous place to share.
Well, you touched on shame, and maybe that's in my humble opinion could potentially be in the realm of the foundation that motivates isolation.
Yeah.
And because I know for me, this isn't my scenario, but something as simple as, just off the top of my head, someone in high school telling someone they had a big nose, that sticks with them till they die. So we carry burdens of shame very heavily, and when there might be, and maybe you can touch on this next, when there might be a trust that has been broken between a woman and their body, or even a man and their body, is that more, is there a certain archetype or person that might, shame might be that main motivator to really just buckle in and do this all on their own? Or
yeah, shame is huge. You're right. I don't know if there's an archetype, because I think it exists in everyone, even people who are striving to be really open and
sure,
break stigmas, and it's still there, because I think we live in a society where we're programmed to think that the more work you put into something, the more effort you make, you can achieve anything you want. And even though we live in a world where we actually don't have a lot of control over a lot of things,
right.
We are kind of living under the pretense that we do, and so this can hit extra hard. And then that shame, because it can feel like failure, it can feel like I'm not good enough, especially for someone who is used to achieving lots of goals. And that can be hard. I hear that a lot, of like, I'm not telling anyone until I have good news, because I don't want to, if it doesn't work, I don't want people to know. They'll think I'm a failure. So I think that is a really big part of it. But I think that's kind of universal.
Yeah. I something as basic as admitting vulnerability is, Brené Brown's work, but is, maybe at the foundation of this, it not wanting to be seen that way. But when when many years ago, when certain circumstances happened in my life and my little family's life, I learned a really valuable lesson, and maybe you can touch on your thoughts on this. We were in a circumstance where life was just so much that, and so many things kind of were rolling over us at one time, that usually in life we could shoulder things on our own, but we were like, okay, we need help from the village. Like, there is just, there's no option anymore. And so, like, maybe the shame, the vulnerability of reaching out to, somewhat trusted ones. You find out really who's you're going to be tight with in life, because certain people do step up and it makes you family, basically. But it taught me, and maybe I hope I get this out right, that allowing people to support you is a gift to them.
Like that.
Because if you turn it around and it's like someone that you really like or love says, you know what, I could really use your help. Ralph Waldo Emerson, maybe, one cannot truly give without receiving, for themselves. So that taught me a lot. And I don't know, when someone's in with you and they're kind of in that place, do you encourage them to maybe try and find some safe people, or how do you approach that isolation?
Yeah, I love how you worded that. And I think you're right, because we can't know what's someone else is capable of, and they can't live up to their true potential if we're not even giving them the opportunity and letting them know that we need help. And in that sense, we are all vulnerable. Like everyone on this planet, we are all equally vulnerable, and we are all equally strong too internally. So why not share all of it, not just the good stuff? At the same time, I think it is really important to pick the right people and the right time to share this with. And that's not always possible. It's not the people who you might want to normally share with might have their own stuff going on at that time.
Right.
Or it's just uncertain. The people that are closest to you for other reasons might not understand this at all and might be judgmental or what have you. But in that case, I definitely recommend getting support from the online community, from other people going through similar things, and people like you, people like me. There are other ways. There just has to be an outlet in some way, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but over the years, because of how intimate a topic this is, and maybe touching on some of the deepest parts of what it is to be human, that's a huge assertion, but it's somewhere in that vicinity, bringing life, into the world. I've met some of my closest friends through practice, and because you get so deep and you share, and it's a safe place to be vulnerable, and that's really quite special. So advice for couples might be to come and talk to someone like you, right? To maintain love, intimacy, and joy.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes individually, sometimes as a couple.
Yeah.
And it can be good. I mean, this is a couple issue, when it is a couple going through infertility, it takes two. And there is some research saying that in a male-female relationship, often men feel left out of this whole process.
Sure.
And they want to be more included. And that can help reduce the stress.
Right.
And then because distress in a relationship is kind of cyclical, that can also help reduce the other person's distress. Sorry, there's a truck driving by right now.
Yeah. Anyone married can attest to that, right? It's or with somebody, with a family, anything. It's like you can only be as happy as your least happy family member. That's just kind of how it is.
Exactly. And so one person's distress, it's relational. It can affect the other person's distress, which then affects the relationship as a whole. But same with coping styles.
Right.
So,
I guess it goes both ways.
Yeah. So one way, someone might deal with the distress and the stress of fertility, IVF, and all of that is to isolate, is to shut down, is to avoid, go into extreme escapism mode. And what that does to the other person often increases anxiety, increases their distress. And then you've got this pattern, this cycle going on. And so that's part of it is trying to figure out for each person individually, what is my style? What do I need? What works best for me? What doesn't?
Right.
And then talking it through, whether that's with a therapist or on their own, talking it through and trying to figure out how you can get both needs met, or take turns, whatever way is going to work best in a relationship. And sometimes that does mean isolation, and sometimes it means seeking support, because that's one of the things that can happen. One person might want to tell the whole world.
Yeah.
One person might want to tell nobody, and trying to figure out if there's a happy medium there.
Interesting you bring that up. So this is a great area, because it's a couple. You said it takes two. I mean, in a cisgendered heterosexual scenario that we're kind of speaking to here, women and men say, well, you should maybe both come in and we can chat and we get the whole picture and But in our practice, often the initial is that way, and then they come in individually from there, because there's nuanced pieces that, like you just said, that a woman might want to to step in this direction to kind of be proactive or deal with this, and the men may or may not want to, and it could be the opposite, and every combination of, and their coping mechanisms can be completely different. And so do you find that it's partly because I mean, something as simple, might sound silly, but something as simple as something I tell couples quite regularly is, if one of you is not sleeping well and it's disturbing the other, don't sleep together for a while. Like, sleep is important for your mental, emotional strength and your physical recovery and all kinds of things. And it's okay, hang out right before bed, go sleep well and come back. Or is that kind of the need to give people permission to not always have to shoulder the other person's stuff, or to, like, what do you see there? And I don't know if there's a question on that.
Yeah. Well, I guess what you're saying is there does seem to be an imbalance where one person is kind of maybe they actually are shouldering more of the work, or they feel like they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you mean? And then taking responsibility for how the other person feels? And
yeah, I guess just it's such a nuanced thing between the men and women, because, some men, like you said, some research shows they really want to be involved, that fixer idea or whatever. And there's others that are like, don't want to talk about it at all, because then it goes away. And for the most part, on the woman's side, I don't see that juxtaposition that men have. And maybe it's because the woman ultimately carries the pregnancy, and so there's a deeper involvement somehow, intimately, this knowledge that is just built in. But there seems to be that the women are more motivated. But how do you know when to, like, give them permission, to be like, well, maybe you need to not have to fix your husband right now, or he needs some advice to go out with his friends, or find something, or take back a piece of his life, or and when, because there's usually that womanly instinct would be to share a lot with their husband, and maybe that's not right either. Like, I don't know, just to speak to that.
I think what seems to help is to really have each person, again, focus on what they need, and then to be able to talk about it and understand that even though you have the same goal in the end, you're going to get there in different ways. Because the thing with infertility is it exacerbates the differences that two people are just naturally going to have, like the differences in coping, differences in communication, decision making, spending,
sure.
differences in seeking support, information processing. Like, some people, they need more time to kind of figure it out, and then others are like, no, we have to move now.
Right.
All these differences play a role, and these are things that sometimes in relationships we're not really paying a lot of attention to, or at least not all in one go. This is a crash course in that.
Right.
So really, I think working to have some compassion for the other person, or empathy, that no two people are going to deal with things the same way, and that it doesn't have to mean anything if the other person needs a timeout, or the other person needs, to talk, or the other person needs this or that, and to really try to separate that, not take it personally.
Okay.
It's not easy, but it does seem to help.
Right. My best advice to women from being a man often is, don't assume he knows how to support you. Please just spell it out.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting around waiting, you might for a long time. It's not that he doesn't want to be there and support. It's just, I don't know how, or every relationship is different, obviously, but that's kind of
I think there's even research on that, if I recall, from a long time ago, that said in infertility, men, well, everyone tends to feel helpless, but men in particular, and they really want guidance on what to do. And this is where I find there's an issue, because a lot of women will say, well, he should just know. And yeah, that would be great. But we can't, even when we think we know what the other person wants, we don't always get it right. And it can change from minute to minute even. So I think it's always good to check in with each other and say, okay, what is it? What can I do right now? What do you need from me right now? What's going to help in this situation? And just, check in daily, weekly, whatever feels right.
So is that's almost marriage counseling 101, is like, okay, let's learn how to communicate our feelings and be able to not just voice what we need, but figure it out. and sometimes you need a professional to help pull from you what is the underlying behind the scenes programming, because we don't even know it. We're walking through life kind of blind to what's motivating our thoughts and feelings, and just that alone is like, oh, okay, well, when you say something like that, I feel shame, and then I act like my 8-year-old who was shamed or bullied as a child. Like, just some help finding those places. So there's empathy, and there's that space for that vulnerability.
And really watching the communication. Like I think where you're going with that is the classic I statement. I feel ashamed when this is said, or when this happens, or and you're right. It's kind of like couples counseling 101, but the issue is that it's happening at a time of intense crisis, unfortunately.
Well, when you said that, I was thinking, we're all traumatized by COVID now, but when that kind of blew up, a crisis of that magnitude, and maybe I'm not likening fertility to that, but it's relatively something that comes into your life, and like a tidal wave maybe, and it's a big deal. It really highlights the cracks. And so it's a really opportune time to maybe get some professional help and be like, okay, this is how I'm reacting. And then someone like Holly can say, okay, well, let's unpack that a bit and find out why, because then we can find detours and ways to soften that with your communications and stuff, or just to even recognize it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good comparison, because you learn new strategies for coping, you make some changes, you pivot when you need to, and you let go of what is maybe less important. And then in the end, you everything, you find space for things. I think that's what's happening with COVID. People have adjusted somehow, some haven't, but the world as a whole, and with infertility, that's definitely a task, is because it's one of the stages of grieving, right? Is that integration and trying to figure out where this fits in your life. And it's not all bad news either, because even though it's so intense, I mean, I know you're aware that there's a survey that said this is equivalent to a terminal illness diagnosis, being diagnosed with infertility. But there's quite a bit of, like, a fair number of studies out in the last few years that have found some couples actually grow closer and improve, and they call that marital benefit. And it's sort of like, some people have heard the term post-traumatic growth. It's kind of like that. They find new ways of getting closer. They improve their relationship in the end.
I call those nervous breakthroughs.
And what's really interesting is that it's about 1/3 of couples, they improve things, and that doesn't matter whether the IVF worked or not, whether they have had a child or not.
Wow. It's something that's hopefully reassuring to couples, and maybe I get to see a very specific demographic of the population at our clinics, but when I first, like 20 plus years ago, got into this clinical focus, the reproductive medicine, I had an assumption that this was devastating to couples. And to my pleasant surprise, to this day, I can't even bring up couples that it came to breaking points with.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
Right. Is
Interesting.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you see a lot more for that are struggling maybe more deeply. I don't know. That's an assumption too, but I think that's pretty positive that hopefully, at least in my experience, more than 1/3 have that growth,
Oh, awesome.
which is awesome.
Well, yeah, I think there's things that couples can do to, increase the chance of that. I've definitely seen that too. I think I see people at a different stage. Sometimes,
Sure.
we both see people at the beginning and during, and then sometimes I see people a few years later. And it's really amazing when couples are able to work through it and become even closer.
Yeah. And that basic marriage counseling, maybe which would have never happened before because there's an aversion, even my wife and I, we utilize that tool. We utilize counseling and coaching, and because we're like, well, it's only our ego standing between us and gaining tools and getting stronger, because we want to grow old together. That's our goal. So we're smart. We can figure it out. And there's no shame involved in getting help. Yeah, we've gotten past that. But even at times where we're having more difficulty, and life is heavy and we start fighting more or whatever it might be, there's still that little aversion in me who is hopefully relatively enlightened into the benefits of seeking out help, to be like, no, we're fine, kind of. So a big part of my message would be, I want that stigma to end, and everyone should have counselors or coaches, no matter what they're doing in life. I mean, professional athletes have them. Why wouldn't we,
Yeah, I agree. We could all benefit from it. I know I feel a little biased saying that, but it's true. Where else are you going to get that, hour or whatever you have booked of undivided attention without having to hear the other person's problems?
Yes. And so, oh yeah, just circling back, the other person's, opinions and thoughts, and just focusing on yourself. There is a ton of benefit to seeking out help just on your own, because I also have a belief myself that you got to do the work yourself. Then you're stronger in that relationship too. So there must be times where, even if your husband or your wife is just not into moving forward the way you are, just trust that you should do what you think and your feeling is right for you. Is that would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Two halves that are, in a really good place make up a way better whole than, and that's why couples who do grow and feel closer afterwards, it's more likely if they're already in a good place to begin with. It's still possible, but more difficult if things are already rocky and then you go through this crisis. So yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
I'm a big fan of that too. Everyone, it's sort of like our duty in the world, is to try to improve ourselves.
If you love this person, they're your best friend kind of idea, like go to the counseling as soon as you can, or get help and start talking about it and learn some tools before you need them. That would be, I mean, a recipe for life, period, I guess. Get help with your finances before you need that help. Get help with, with your health before, whatever it might be. And because there's no shame. I want to take that stigma out of going out to get help, from something. Never have we been so siloed in this life as humans. I don't think, the village has just become professionals, which is great because you can be private if you want, but still go out and get it. But so amazing. Can you shifting just a tiny bit because of the male female thing too. How do you find that there is differences and commonalities in how women kind of show up emotionally and mentally through this, and men? Because I know just generally in life, I hate it, but it might be true that something statistically, I'm sure you have, would point toward men using anger and its ugly cousins like frustration, impatience, all these things, to irritability, to shoulder the maybe sadness or whatever is underpinning, and women might be just more able to sit in a vulnerable, worrisome or fearful kind of place of things not going the way they want them to. That I'm generalizing, and I want to step back and say that's not probably the truth, but can you speak to that at all?
Just in how different genders react to.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Or is there a kind of common ground, and kind of, and then we can maybe slip into what to do about it? Because day to day, I'm a little more irritable if something's bugging me, or I'm a little more sad if something's bugging me, or I am a worrywart and I'm just so worried about, or I don't know, is there?
Yeah, I think there are gender differences, but I think there's also a lot of just individual differences regardless of gender. And I think part of it is just knowing what those differences are in a relationship, being aware of, okay, this is how I tick. These are my, I tend to go here when I'm stressed, or I tend to do that.
Right.
And again, talking about it and being open about it with the other person. I think women do show men and women both feel distress with infertility. Women tend to show it in a different way. Like that is definitely the case. And, it's also, like I mentioned earlier, it can feel like there's an unfair burden of work, the emotional work, because even if it's purely a sperm issue, it's the woman going through the treatment and booking the appointments and organizing everything. Oh, really?
Well, hopefully not.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true.
They always carry the pregnancy, so sure, let's get you healthy too. And they want to be there because it's stressful. But yeah.
But it's still a woman going through IUI or IVF at the fertility clinic, and a lot of women will feel the heaviness of that, having to plan everything and the appointments around work, and kind of take on the responsibility of, okay, we got to, watch our diet. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And that, I think, I don't know if that's even gender. It's more of a sex thing, because, sure. But that can definitely play a role in a relationship.
Like
you probably have seen that too. Yeah. Resentment. And then if one person is not doing the same amount of work, or it's not seeming like they are, because they're coping in a different way, it can definitely bring up some trouble in relationships. But again, I think that's where really having some empathy, open communication with the other person, to realize like they're still engaged, even if they're not the ones picking up the phone, booking the appointments.
Right.
And you don't both have to be doing exactly the same thing to be contributing.
So that it still just keeps, like, it's spinning back. That most actionable item is getting to speak to somebody who can help you extrapolate or figure out what drives you and how you react to stress. Stresses like this, so something as simple as, oh, my husband's being a grump, he's stressed out, and you can, it's just easier when you know that, and you can love him through it, instead of being, oh my God, you're such a crusty bugger, and it's spiraling. And even in the moment, it's still hard, even though you know it.
Right.
At least you can circle back, and maybe there's signals or key words or something that a counselor can kind of help you utilize as a tool. And maybe you can speak to that, to be like, this is my little 8-year-old in like that's in charge right now, can you like just be really gentle with me? Or so it comes back to that again, and just being like, oh, my wife's really, she's busy. She's so busy that like it's dizzying, and instead of being like, calm down, you should like be relaxing, it's that's not the right support. You just might know.
Right. And often when there's when someone is saying, calm down, just relax, what they're saying is a reaction to how they're feeling, like, because
Right.
they're probably feeling a little stressed in the moment, and they need that calmness.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, if you can show empathy to what the other person is needing in that moment, and if you don't know what it is, ask,
Mm-hmm.
then you can start to see why someone is behaving in the way that they are. And okay, they're doing this because this is their coping style for dealing with stress.
Right.
But their coping style is making me feel anxious, and so it can change it can change the dynamic just by being aware of it and changing how you communicate with each other.
Even the level of empathy is like, oh yeah, okay, that's what's happening, instead of he's not just an asshole kind of thing.
Yeah, I call that, learning to respond instead of just react.
Okay.
Because it takes time. A reaction is instant and it's based on our own stuff, but responding takes time to kind of think about what's really going on here.
So, am I right in thinking that doesn't just happen because a counselor told you to do that? Is it a bit of a practice?
Oh, it's definitely a practice. Yeah.
Yes, that was
Even
a rhetorical question.
need practice.
Yeah.
No, it's an ongoing practice.
Yeah,
for
forever,
sure.
I think, right? Yeah, we're always tested, and we're so programmed from our life that it's hard to ever change. But being aware is a huge piece.
Yeah, the more each person is aware of how they tick, then it can make it easier to know how the other person ticks, and it makes this a lot easier to go through. And that's, I think, why some couples really struggle, and some can move forward and become even closer. It has to do with where you're at in the relationship at the beginning, what else is going on. A lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of times our styles of grieving and coping and decision-making, we don't really even think about too much. So the more you can, the more it can help anytime something big comes up.
Yeah, knowing if it's like come from, how you, interacted with your father, or like all kinds of things can help. From my perspective, and through the work that I've done and I've seen others do, there's this overall sense of, my spirit, what's inside me and what's in my mind and emotionally, kind of almost hasn't changed much since I was a kid. In some senses, like I'm still just Spence. I'm Spence, and I always have been. I've got some wisdom and maybe some more knowledge and stuff, but I still get sad at things. I still, or I still can get mad and just knowing that little person it's really helped me to have compassion for myself. And then through realizing kind of who might be in charge in certain situations, and that little kid is needing to be nurtured instead of being yelled at, helps me look at my wife and do the same. It's like, maybe there was abuse in the past that like is hard to get around and reprogram, when it's a trigger or something triggers emotions that are kind of related to that. And so just even having a professional kind of work through a lot of these things that might never have even been thought about, in a lot of couples or individually, can help grow that empathy muscle. And right, am I accurate? Yeah,
it's been shown that empathy, we expect it to just be naturally there, and a lot of, we all are born with empathy, but it's a skill also that
Mm.
can be improved. The more we think about it, work on it. There's some research showing mindfulness practices can improve empathy.
Right.
And so, yeah, looking at it like every person on this planet has a past and has baggage and has things that are going on in any given moment that we don't know anything about.
Mm.
And in the case of couples, especially during infertility, it's really good to remember that, okay, how someone is reacting right now isn't necessarily about me.
Yeah, right. That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be other things that are kind of going on in the background. So that's part of empathy for sure. And then remembering like you're on the same, one of the things that's really helpful is remembering your team and you're on the same side.
Yeah.
And even if someone says something that's really off, it's probably just a slip, and it doesn't have to mean anything. And couples who do look at this as, us against the world and we're in this together and, regardless of the outcome, those are couples that do end up growing closer together after IVF is all done.
That's beautiful. That's great. Just when someone says, for example, if my wife is, and this is one of my practices, I'm giving examples and just putting myself out there vulnerably, like in a vulnerable place, because I'm open to doing the work. And I think it's important. Something as simple as my wife being sad, who I am and what I have been through. Somehow when I see that triggers in a shame in me, because if she's sad, I'm not doing something right. And that is so speaking to you saying, well, it's likely most times not personal or something you should take personally. Yeah. But how do we not? Because we're the master of our stage and our play, or however, Shakespeare put it. But so everything runs through my filter. And it's like, oh, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? And I didn't do something right when I was a kid or at some point in my life where it brought me great shame, and I color everything with that. If someone around me is unhappy,
pushes buttons.
Yeah, that triggering you said. So and then realizing that about myself helps me not spiral at the same time as my wife being sad, because how crappy is that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Then it's just probably, an argument or something won't work out, or I won't give the support that should be there, because they can't, your spouse can't always tell you, it's like, right now I need this and this and that, because they're just not able to get that out. But if you kind of know that through basically what they might need through someone else helping you find that, like a counselor like yourself, it's just more apt to, or less likely to degrade into arguments and fights.
Yeah. And what you're describing is so common. I mean, I think everybody experiences that, even when you've done a lot of internal work, read all the self-help books, gone for counseling, it can still happen. But the more you know your triggers and the more you know how you react in those moments, the more you can either prevent it or at least flip it right afterwards and say, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, something like that. And because then what happens is we all have a lens we look at things through. And if you're reacting to her lens through, or what you think her lens is through your lens, we're just never really getting to the bottom of it.
No.
And I really, working on yourself is really important. But then the other way is to clarify with the other person.
Yeah.
I heard you say this. Does that mean,
Exactly. There you go. Communication. Hey.
Yeah. Looking at it kind of tentatively instead of, you always say this, or, and kind of like, did you mean, when you said that, did you mean this? Or what did you really mean there? And just trying to get to the bottom of it instead of all the layers, lenses.
And so that's if you do that work, great, you can. But like you said, in the heat of a moment, if you're that in control of your emotions, kudos, nice work.
Yeah.
But it's not always going to be that way. So if
No.
your spouse has also done the work and heard about the work that you've done and learned about you and how you might be reacting, it's going to exponentiate the chances of there being a smooth landing.
Yeah. And that's where couples therapy can really come in handy. I sound like I'm advocating for it, but it's true. I think we can, because it can be hard if one person has done the work,
Yeah,
and the growth, and the other person hasn't. It's still better than if neither has.
yeah.
But it's wow, so much more impactful if both people are on the same page.
There's a shared language, like from my experience, at least, and I can only speak to mine mostly and what I've heard, obviously, from countless others, but you learn a different language that, that you speak. And there's some new words that like embody what's happening more and can kind of really anchor you in, oh, he's talking that counseling talk, so I should kind of tune in here, or whatever. That sounds silly maybe, but it's true for me anyway, and from what I see. And that's really quite powerful. That's another tool like that drags you into a more of a mindful place.
Yeah, it's modeling behavior, kind of like how we teach kids things. You're modeling how to respond to something, and modeling how to act, react, what to say. And that is helpful not just in a relationship, a marital relationship, but workplace, anything. It makes other people go, oh yeah, maybe I should up my game and and remember my communication skills. And
what we should be learning maybe in school, maybe the whole takeaway from this is like, well, if you and I in an hour can boil down kind of some of the common denominators and needs of communication and to keep a relationship strong and healthy, we should be able to put that in the curriculum somehow.
That would be fantastic.
Right. Any relationship, like you said, I love you saying that, because this, if a woman's deciding to go and take the risk of bringing someone into this world, I'm struggling with getting pregnant, or having some of these skills to be able to set down some guidelines when they're having that conversation is going to be powerful as well. And it will help that person they're sharing with know how to be in that relation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So just mindfulness is you touched on that. And then I think there's just so much gold in here and some really great takeaways, but just any little things, like you said, mindfulness, is that breath work, is that kind of signaling between couples, things you can learn on your own, or is there anything that you've found that you've recommended people come back a lot and say, hey, that was great?
Yeah, well, practicing anything that brings on the parasympathetic response, acupuncture, breath work for sure, meditation, just grounding, and practicing it regularly, even when you think you don't need it.
Right.
Some research says 10 minutes a day even can have a good, an impact.
Yeah.
And so that's going to look different for every single person. It just, whatever's calming down the nervous system doesn't have to look any one way, but there's that. And then I think really looking at also communication, we talked a little bit about that, but I think even before using communication skills, it's good to make sure you set aside some time to talk about all the fertility stuff that needs to be talked about, but not let it take over. So, schedule it, put a time limit on it. At the beginning of the conversation, say, okay, I need 10 minutes. Is this a good time?
Yeah.
10 minutes, and that way the other person isn't going to go, oh my God, this is going to last all night. And I just wanted to watch a movie.
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
That is great
And
advice, Holly. Great advice, I think.
yeah, and then but again, you have to kind of talk about all that and talk about
Yeah.
what one person needs and what the other doesn't, and practicing that empathy is super important.
It's I think that is so important to schedule things like that, because even something else, I keep using myself as an example, and I'm not trying to be self-centered. I want to be brave and share. But
Yeah, that's great.
even something else that I've learned about myself, partly as a caregiver, and there's usually someone who's a bit more of a caregiver in a relationship. Not always. You could speak way more to that, but I'm just, in my own experience, something I've had to learn myself is to understand when I don't have the capacity to be there for someone because I'm in a weakened state, or I'm just, I'm having my own stuff and struggles, to be able to communicate that, because it would be my instinct to be like, oh, they need help. That's easier. I'm going there. But then I don't have the power to hold the space, and then it goes bad.
So again, yeah, to know what you need and to express it, like to share that. Like, I would love to be here for you right now, but right now I just need to do this for a bit first, something like that.
But I wouldn't have known that if my this is in particular my coach. I've done coach counseling tons, both, but hadn't saw that and pointed it out to me, and I've worked with them for years and years. It was like, I think we should start to work on you finding ways that you can communicate to people that you can't be there for them. And that was like, what, really? Because I think I'm being there for someone because I chose it, but then it degrades into an argument, and I walk away going, oh my God, they're just I shouldn't have bothered, instead of looking at myself and saying, I wasn't there properly, and I should have just said that at the start.
Yeah, we all need to know our limits and to be okay with it, because that's a perfect example of potentially some shame or guilt happening, where I'm a caregiver, I need to be there and I can't, and then placing meaning on that. And so that's it's all about what meaning we place on things. And it doesn't have to mean anything other than you just need a break at that moment.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to just take some time to sit with it, and I'll come back to you. Is that fair? Kind of, and I see that's me even like not acknowledging myself, saying, is that fair? So I'm still doing the work.
Yeah. So maybe more like, I will be better able to help you after I do this, that, or the other thing. Something like that.
Take a breath. Yeah. Cool. I really want to be there for you, but I'm having a day, and I don't think I can support you how I should. Yeah. Okay. These are things that, everyone has to kind of find and dig up on their own, and they're all going to do nothing but help you grow old with the person you and are going through this fertility journey with.
Yeah. Or even flipping that language, instead of saying, I'm not going to be able to support you like I should, I will be able to support you even better.
Oh, positive. Glass half full.
20 minutes. Yeah, exactly. It changes the brain, right? In each person. So that can help. But it's all work, right? It all takes work, and it's practice, and it's ongoing. Yeah. And so that's where self-care is really important, to keep up the energy to be able to do the work. Yeah.
So from my perspective, the health, take care of your temple, because if you get good sleep and you give your body good nutrition, you exercise, all these things, you're going to be in a better mood to start. There's your foundation. And then doing the work from the mental emotional side is digging in, being vulnerable, figuring out how you tick and what's going on, and the same with your spouse, and to keep working at that like you would going to the gym.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's a great place to unless there's anything else you wanted to add, that was awesome, Holly.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours. There's so much in relationships, and especially when going through infertility.
Yeah.
But yeah, good place to stop. We can always continue another time.
Yes. And we'll see maybe what kind of feedback or answers that kind of come from there. I might come up with some other ideas and things, and you as well. But I hope it was okay that, I kind of used, I think more people need to be maybe open about what's happening in their marriages and so, and the vulnerabilities, because from the outside looking in, I think a ton of people look at my wife and I and like, oh, you guys are so great. And it's like, yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
We love each other dearly, and that's why we do the work. But
exactly.
It didn't just happen.
No, it's good. It's good too, those examples you gave, because I think people will really relate to them.
Yeah, good. Yeah, they're not that unusual, right? I don't think we're special. It's the human feels a few ways. And I remember going to a Tony Robbins conference way back. And he said, all psychology boils down to people feeling like they're not good enough and they're not lovable. I'm like, okay, that's stuck with me.
That's pretty accurate.
There's some pretty big truth to that, I think. And yeah, that's just another layer of, oh, I love you. Obviously, you're not feeling lovable, and I'm sorry that whatever's going on is making you feel that way. Like there's just more empathy. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes a long way. It's hard when things are rough in life, and like infertility is one of them, but it is practice. And the more you practice, the better it gets, for sure.
Like my Qigong teacher always said, now you go home practice. That's how you get it. That's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, and Holly, I can really tell couples that do work,
Yeah.
Like
the language, how they, yeah.
It's amazing. You can, like just last night, I saw a couple. I'm like, you've really been putting in the work, doing the homework. Like it shows. Love it.
Because how many times do people break up in relationships, not because they don't love each other, but just because like shit is too much. Like it just you just can't deal. But it's and you just end up being ships sailing, on different courses, and instead of doing the work and being like, no, I really love this person. They're great. Like it's worth the work.
Yeah. And so to relate that back to infertility, if people just ride out that storm and find a way to do it and not cause more hurt,
right.
They can get through it just like, and be just like any other couple in the end, because the intensity doesn't last forever,
or way more powerful,
whether they have a kid or not.
yeah. Okay. That is that's great takeaway. I think whether you have kid or not, because maybe more importantly, if you don't, because it's something that you will make the rest of your life better, regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, Holly, until part 3.
Yeah.
This is
sure.
This is it. Like I said, there's a couple things I got to jump into, and I'm sure I'm already taken up enough of your time. But on behalf of everyone, I thank you so much for jumping in.
My pleasure. It was fun.
And, I know they
can have just a chat.
It is so fun to chat, and this is just us chatting. Basically, I think it's how it felt to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, but and I think being 20 years plus in the industry too, it's important for people like you and I to reflect and be like, is this what you're seeing? What are you seeing? How? What's and that's just a professional responsibility even of ours.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And it's so interesting to see what other people are seeing, because it's so easy to, sometimes I feel like I'm in my own little bubble because I'm here working at home from home.
Yeah.
So it's, great to hear what you're going through, what you're seeing. And it's good that there have been some changes over the years. There's still room for improvement though.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. It's a tricky one. It's not cancer and you don't rally support. It's different. It's and that's a lot, and even more reason to get help from take care of your health, get help from the mental, emotional side, look into the marvels of new technology and the ART field, and
Yeah.
just kind of collect all the information you can, and then feel what's right for you, and find trusted people like yourself for, if you trust me, great. I will help you, put a plan together holistically and be there for you along the way, and find other resources like Holly. And whether she's taking patients or not, I'm not sure, but
I'm mostly doing donation and surrogacy stuff for the most part, just because there seems to be a shortage of other people who do that. But occasionally I'll take on a new client. But I'm glad you've connected with Alexandra. She's great. So awesome. I was just emailing with her yesterday. That's so funny.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Well, I'd love to pull her in and do kind of a show similar to this, and just see where we go, because she's another human that has a different experience, and I think that'd be wonderful. And maybe she has room for more patients than you do. But the donation and surrogacy is insanely important. And we, the mental, emotional piece of deciding to move in that direction is its own thing. Yeah,
it is. And there's also a friend and colleague, Royce, who I think you've met at different open houses and things that you've had and I've had. Royce Jewick.
Okay.
And
rings a bell.
She has done so much training in mindfulness, and her focus is fertility and postpartum depression and that sort of thing. So she might be good too, particularly about the mindfulness. She loves talking about that.
Okay, I love that, because there's another lady too that reached out, EMDR, the eye movement stuff, and how to work through child loss trauma. I mean,
EMDR is good for that, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Hey, okay, great. So
it can be. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Any kind of trauma.
Yeah, I might get a cyber intro from you then for Royce, because maybe I'll just end up doing a little series, and because this is huge, right? All these things, all what you and Royce and Alexandra and offer is it's essential. I've tried to say we're done 10 times, but
all right, yeah,
but just keeps going, and it's so good anyway. Holly, thanks again.
Yeah, you're anytime.